And now the last thing we need to do for the class is to add the methods of the class. So we have the attributes, okay, which defines basically what is the class. Then we have the constructor here, so we can create an object, but then we need to add the methods to implement the functionalities of the class. So basically, what do we want to do with this class? So we want to do actually three things. We want to be able to initialize the LED. So I'm going to create a void init function. Okay, so the prototype and actually the definition of the function. We want to be able to power on the LED. So I'm simply going to call this method on. Okay, it makes sense inside the LED class. Okay, if you call LED.on, you know you are going to power on the LED. If this was outside of the class, you would need to call it power on LED to make sure that you know what it is. Okay, because this is inside the class, then you have some more context. And you need void off also. What are we going to do in the init function? Well, we are going to call pin mode with the pin number, so pin. Here, we use the pin attributes that we have and that we got from the constructor, and then output. Because this is an LED, we are going to set it as output. And then to power on the LED, we simply do digital write with the pin number and high. And to power off the LED, digital write with the pin number and low. And well, that's pretty much it for the implementation of the methods of the LED class for now for what we want to do. So as you can see, we use abstraction. So instead of now, if you want to power on the LED, instead of calling digital write with the pin and high, we are just going to call LED on, which makes more sense, okay, with the context. And one last thing I'm going to do, actually I'm going to create another void init function. So I'm going to create an overload of this method by its default state. So let's say you want to set a default state. So you want to initialize with pin mode and you want to set a default state. With just init, well, it's initialized to output and the default will be low. Now you may want to specify directly low or high. And in this case, instead of calling init without any parameter, you may call init with a byte parameter, which will be high or low. And in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to call the init function first. And then I'm going to do if default state is equal with 2 equal to high, then I'm going to do on, and else I'm going to do off. And here you can see that we don't repeat code, okay? So the pin mode function inside the init, we're not going to repeat it here. Instead, we just call the init function, okay? And here, if the default state is high, then we just call the on function. We don't just write digital write again. Okay, so that is very powerful with object-oriented programming, is that you create some methods and then from any method inside the class, you can also call the other method of the class. So you can really build more complex functionalities that actually make sense. All right, and now the class here is finished.